recording. And the backup recording. All right, so welcome everybody. Happy full moon. I'm Reverend Anna Jones, and thank you for coming and participating this evening. We're gathering together to unite our light at the time of this full moon, and also to unite our light with Archangel Michael. At Archangel Michael's request that he intuitively gave me. I've been doing a series of these messages again this year, this time again on the full moons. But I missed last month. I apologize for that because of being very ill at that time. But I'm happy to be here again. Not sure, he still hasn't asked for a length of time, so I'm just kind of taking it month by month by month. This is not my agenda. It's also ultimately his messages, his energetic light activation, his Archangel Michael's transmission, and his agenda. So I'm just kind of trying to follow that whenever I can and as I can. So this month I'm happy to be able to do that. So. And saying hello to everybody and asking everybody. So hello, and for those of you who want to use the chat, let's save it for the very end is what I usually like to do. We can all say hi and make comments and or even just say farewell if it's either hello and goodbye, that type of thing at the end, even ask questions, that type of thing. So because I'm trying to shorten the intros of these as much as possible for the sake of the videos and the recordings not being too long. However, there's just several things to say that I feel is very important. Hopefully, most of you already have been introduced to my work already. If you haven't, you're welcome to go to my website to learn more about me and my work that has been ongoing since I became an interfaith minister in 1993. And even before that, all throughout my life, being clairvoyant, being clairaudient, being a channel, being a medium, and also practicing energy healing since the time of 14, when a lot of this began for me. It was really in my teenage years that a lot of these mystical experiences, I had them in my childhood, but as far as being able to have it with others and receive messages for others, etc., it started at the age of 14 for me. So it's been a very long spiritual journey with many spiritual awakenings. And so we're going to just save the chat. Again, I'll make that kind of announcement again, save putting things in the chat until the end. So it kind of, because I would have to like divert my attention down to it. It signals me that somebody's put something in there, but I'd have to put my attention down to it in order to answer any of it or respond to any of it, which I'll do at the end. So you're welcome to go to my website to find out more about that. There's things on there, the bio page and video interview of myself talking about my life as a modern mystic for the Mystic Summit that I did. So you can go to annajonesonline.com. If you're not familiar and you haven't done so already, please do. And you will also want to visit the Celestial Voice podcast. In fact, that's where the recordings from tonight will end up. Sometimes it takes me longer than other times. Last month, the last transmission took quite a long time because of just all kinds of things that went crazy in my schedule, and then getting sick after that, including leading a retreat, and then getting sick right after that retreat, etc. So anyway, they all end up on the Celestial Voice podcast. All the recordings do. And I do email all of you once it's up and ready. So, but if you want to make sure you get it the fastest way, you can either subscribe to the YouTube channel where the video actually gets put up for the Celestial Voice podcast, and you'll get a notice that gets sent to the subscribers that has been posted, or subscribe to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I guess it's called now, and you'll get a notice also to all subscribers when it's up there, the fastest notification without waiting for an email or anything like that. There's like over 50, I think like 58, 59 episodes now. I think we're getting ready to reach the 60th. And these are just the global transmissions that I'm sharing publicly. I've been doing the global transmissions since around 2009 is what my estimate is, 2009, 2010. And usually they were done on solstices and equinoxes. But now, this year, last year, the request has been that they are monthly again. So that's happening the last few years of requests for monthly series, and that they're on the full moons, like I said. So that's why we're here. And I always am guided to share a little bit about the special nature of the full moon. So there's a few things that I'll share. The Native Americans call this the buck moon. And it's a time when, obviously, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, summer is at its peak, right? Like summer is peaking and going strong, right? However, we're coming up to the halfway point of summer. This particular full moon is so late into July that we are coming up to that time period where it's is known as the halfway point between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. And it's called Lammas, Lammas. In the Celtic tradition, it's had other names and other traditions, but that's probably the one that's most famous for, is that name. And that halfway point is very significant. What I call it is a shifting of the energetic tides. Even though we feel peak full moon energy, right smack in the middle of summer. This is the full moon that's kind of in the middle of the summer season here. And we're feeling that energy very strong. Once August 1st comes and we cross that halfway point, we're going to start feeling the days getting shorter more. I don't know if you may have noticed it already. The days are starting to shorten some, but we start to feel it more, and a shift of energetic tide starts happening. I like to call it the beginning of the fall tide. It's still not fall fully, right? Full fall equinox is kind of when it fully arrives and it's fully come. But as far as when we start to make that shift and when that energy of shifting to fall starts to happen, it is that time period between August 1st and September 20th. So that's this weekend. It's right around the corner when we're going to be making that energetic shift. There's still plenty of summer left. It's not like it's the end of summer by any means, but we do start to feel there's some kind of energetic shift, and we start to feel ourselves moving a little bit more and more, thinking a little bit more and more about the fall ahead, right? Even the light starts changing and things along that line, even though summer is still occurring. And so it's a wonderful time of the year for all the things that we normally do during the summer season, right? But it's also a very good time, peak energy right now, for a lot of creative projects. So anything that you're wanting to create, now is a very good time for it. And particularly right now, this time period between the full moon and Lammas. Looking down here at my notes, there's some things that I wanted to make sure that I touch upon for the astronomy. Is more like I'm more interested in cosmology. I'm not an astrologer. I don't go into that in any of these introductions, although I do mention things within astrology. I'm more interested in the cosmology, which means the movement of the stars and the planets and the energetic effect that they have on all of us and the whole of it in its entirety, right? And so there is an important, after Lammas, the upcoming new moon is going to be a very important eclipse that is going to happen. It's going to be basically a fortnight from now, 2 weeks approximately from now. Actually, I have the date here exactly. August the 12th will be the upcoming new moon. And we'll be beginning eclipse season, but we still will feel, especially with this full moon and Lammas being so close together, we're still going to feel some of the effects of eclipse season kind of starting early. Is what those energies, because it's really much more about the energies and how they start to affect us and when we start to feel them. And so we're going to start feeling that shift happen. And the new moon solar eclipse will then be on August the 12th, followed by the full moon lunar eclipse on August 28th. And I have already gotten the message to do one of these angelic transmissions from Archangel Michael. Already received that message that he wants to do one on the full moon lunar eclipse of August 28th. So that will be the plan for us to gather again and join together our light, unite our light again on that particular full moon lunar eclipse. So The eclipses come in pairs. That's very common. I'll talk a little bit more about that next month. So it's not unusual for there to be two, a solar and a lunar. They do come in pairs. I like that. But when eclipses happen and when eclipse season is nearing, everything starts to feel intensified, right? And so I know everybody's like, well, things are pretty intense in the world right now, as is, right? We have so many wildfires in Europe and Canada and here in the western part of the United States and in places that normally don't even have them. And we have so much, just sort of weather extremes and temperature extremes and just extremes as far as the temperatures of the oceans and then there's extremes in the way that we have our emotions and where our emotions are as individuals. A lot of times there's a lot of people who are going through major ups and downs, and then as a society too, like the extremes, lots of extremes going on. So it's a good time to set intentions and to release things, right? New moon is best for intentions, but full moon can be done also for intention setting. Full moon is also a good time to release things, and especially those ones coming up, right? So any of them can be used for that, but especially the ones that are going to be coming up next month. We'll talk more about that when the time comes. But because that new moon starts the cycle, I wanted to kind of make everybody aware of it. Make everybody aware of it. There's a lot of also like big picture, big karmic picture type shifts that are happening. Archangel Michael spoke. Oh gosh, it's been months and months about it now. About a period of time that we were going to be in that was a karmic return, so to speak, for like humankind, right? Just a karmic inflection point, even referred to it and called it. And he's not ever said anything like, he doesn't speak about things like ever like being destroyed or anything like that. But he does give us things that we need to pay attention to and be aware of, and that aren't necessarily going the way that the angels would have it go, right? But they don't inflict their will upon ours, just like the divine doesn't, overpower our free will. The free will was given as an act of love. So the angels and Archangel Michael especially come through and give guidance, right? And give us like pointers, pointing the way, giving us guidance, giving us insight. Sometimes it's just things that we need to be aware of. Sometimes it's things that we need to shift. Sometimes it's things that we need to change. What he's been speaking about in the most recent, so if you haven't listened to any of the recent global transmissions this year, what he's been speaking about changing and that we need to change is changes to the way we run our energy through our nervous system and healing our nervous systems, and that we're not going to be able to fully respond in our power, fully awaken more our full gifts and power and potentiality as to who we are until we've activated more our energy system. And that also includes, he says that the nervous system is an extension, so to speak, of the energy system. So there's our energy anatomy that he's spoken about, and he's talking about how that energy anatomy allows for the connection between the energy anatomy. He describes it way better than I haven't listened to it recently myself. So when I'm in the trance state, I don't always remember either. I have to go back and listen like everybody else does. He describes that the energy anatomy interfaces with manifests as part of itself, the nervous system in the body. And he describes that the soul uses that as an interface as well. And so the soul is needing that, right? The soul is needing to, we're needing to step into who we really are, remember who we really are, the souls that we really are. And he's been speaking a lot about this topic, right? The souls that we are and remembering who we are, really for maybe over a decade, maybe even longer than that. But we're reaching really critical points in our story, in our soul story, both individually and collectively, where we need to. It's being quickened anyway. Everything's being accelerated by natural means. There's natural energetic effects that are quickening things. He calls it the quickening. But then there's also just the timing of things. Like it's time for us to step further into who we are as the souls that we are, and thus the soul gifts and abilities and things like that that we have as co-creators in this reality. These are some of the themes of his messages that you'll find throughout the Celestial Voice podcast. And even though they're individual messages, there's some very profound stuff in there that is way beyond just the time period that it's channeled in. That's why a lot of times in the write-ups you'll see me describe it as timeless wisdom or perennial wisdom, because there's stuff in there that we need to kind of keep working with, keep applying, keep going back to, until we make progress. This series of messages, I think very much ties into the ones last year, which are also in the podcast on the topics of the emotions, right? Because the emotions seem to stimulate and seem to affect the nervous system so much, right? So much. And the whole series last year, so there's several podcasts you'll see there in a row, are on the topics of different emotions, and some of the most powerful emotions he touched on and described in whole new ways for us to work with those energies. But now he's talking more about the nervous system in this year, and that we need to literally change not just the emotional energy, but just the whole way that our nervous system is almost entrained, right? There's like an entrainment pattern or a training or a conditioned response that the nervous system has to the stressors in our life, to the stressors in our world. Very profound series of messages. I believe there's 3 of them so far. I believe tonight is going to be the 4th. Again, I haven't gone back and listened to them recently. So I want to ask him, so the process that the angels gave me is that that they gave it to me years ago. They said if it always worked, if I always did it, it would always work. And so I'm going to stick with it until they tell me otherwise. And so part of the process is to never approach them without question. So one of my questions that I'm just putting out there on all our behalf is, what further does he want to tell us about or instruct for us about the nervous system, how to heal our nervous systems, how to retrain it or repattern it, perhaps, like if he could go a little bit more. He's been talking about ways how. He definitely has with certain, like there's a breath work exercise he refers to. There's things that he has mentioned that we can use, but if there's anything further that he wants to talk about as to how, I think sometimes we want it to be easier than it is. But I also remember him saying multiple times, it doesn't have to be harder either, right? And we don't have to make it hard when it's not hard, right? We don't have to make it hard. So so if there's anything further that he wants to say about that, and what the new pattern is like. So he's been describing like our ability to expand, not go into like a stress response, not go into a fear response, not go into an anxiety response, but to expand, like going into our power, right, and going into our gift response, right. And so if he wants to expand upon that, even what that not only how, but also like maybe if we just even know what that would be like or what that would be feel like or something like that. I was thinking it might even be helpful for us to even identify when we experience it, because we may be sometimes experiencing it in our life and we don't really know. So those are kind of follow-up questions to that. There's all kinds of messages that he gives on the topic of the soul that you'll find in the Celestial Voice podcast, and the difference between the soul and the spirit, because I saw something flash up there. They're there. He speaks about it pretty regularly. It's not something that I ask about on a regular basis because of how regularly he speaks about it. I always try to think of like what are some of the unique things. I would also like to ask him about the earth and the way that our energy anatomy is and our energies are affecting the earth. I know everybody likes to look at other ways that we have an impact and effect on the earth, and those things are important because everything we do is energy, and everything is energy. But I'm talking more like this nervous system energy and our responses to things, and just the emotional energy also, the effect that that has on the planet. I believe he began to touch on that some last time too. And if you wanted to reveal more of that, I would be grateful. And then anything that he would advise or suggest that we do spiritual practice wise for healing the earth right now. I know I did a private group message in which, for that private group, he said that and this was like weeks before, a few weeks ago, before all of these fires have been broken out. And he said then at the time that the fire energy on the planet was at the highest that it's ever been. Like, it was like a really strong, powerful statement. I was like, wow, I don't know if I've heard him describe that before. And he was definitely indicating that there's a connection between the fiery energy in us and the fiery energy that gets activated and stimulated in the nervous system, and an energetic like connection into the nervous system of the earth, or the nervous system of the energy system of the planet. Not that we're causing the things that are going on. In fact, we pick some of that up from the earth too. We don't just it doesn't go one way, right? We receive some of it from the earth, and we're also giving some of that energy from the earth. So we're picking up fire energy from the earth, and we're also giving our energy to the earth. So what energy can we send that is more balancing? In that private message, he was speaking more obviously about cooling energy, water energy, obviously, things like, praying for rain and things like that. So we all know we can do those things. But I just was wondering if there's anything else, right? Is there anything else that we can, do differently with our energy? For example, when I wrote my first book, I've written two well, not written, I actually I channeled them and then transcribed them and edited them and published them. And they're messages from Archangel Michael. And the first one is called The Teachings of Archangel Michael. And in that first one, one of the things that he said really stood out to me, and he's really not talked too much about it over the years since, even though I'm very, very fascinated, where he said that if we can communicate with the elements of the earth, like we can literally not only just energetically affect them with our unconscious energy and with our emotional energy, but we can literally communicate with them. And that was from years ago when that book came out. That message was, and that was one of the things that we could do for healing ourselves and healing our earth, right? And so I just would like to see if he has anything to say on those topics, right? So there's all kinds of ways that he could go, and there's sometimes where he'll answer my questions, and there's times where he has completely other things in mind, and he goes a whole other direction and may not ever even speak about the nervous system for a very long time. I have no idea. So I'm hearing it at the same time that you're hearing it. I'm in a very deep trance state, and I'm also witnessing, watching, observing. I'm really kind of being the witness. Is kind of my role, to be the instrument, obviously, to allow my voice to be the instrument for the vocal transmission portion to come through. But I'm also just like witnessing it. So I'm hearing it. That's part of what the witnessing is. I'm also sometimes seeing things, visuals that goes along with the transmission. That's why it's kind of like using our modern day computer analogy, kind of like a whole download, like a whole energetic download that comes through. And sometimes there's visuals associated with it. Sometimes there's a whole other audio track, to tell you the truth. There's some things that I hear that's in addition to what's being said and what's coming through the voice. And obviously there's things that I feel. There's sometimes knowings that come through. Whatever those things are, I do try to share them as quickly as possible at the end. So when I'm coming up out of the trance state, I'll try to share them as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot. Sometimes I move to tears. That hasn't happened in a while, but it definitely has happened in the global transmissions. There's no doubt about it. But we start with a process, right? So I'm ready to begin that, if you all are. So there's a process, again, that the angels have given me. First approach, never approach without questions. So I went over what my questions are. And I'm going to also include in the invocation of them that we give them permission to speak about whatever it is that they feel is for our highest good to know right now. So that's going to be part of the question too. It's like, can you just please feel free to speak, about whatever it is that you feel is for our highest good to know right now, and for the highest good of all, because these transmissions are not just through me. He makes that very, very clear. that he's sending energy to the planet at the time that he asked for these. And that, so there's a whole, what I call light activation that he is doing, a whole light transmission, light activation, all this energy that he's transmitting to the earth, that he's transmitting to humankind. Sometimes I feel like it's going to different kingdoms, animal kingdoms, mineral kingdoms, etc. And so that's not always said, is that he doesn't always talk about what he's doing. He just gives this kind of verbal message transmission that goes along with it. But sometimes he will. Sometimes he does talk about, it's rare, but he will sometimes talk about what he's also energetically doing. So there's this invocation that's here at the beginning. The rest of the process is a four-step process that's done, a four-part process that's done in 5 steps. And so the 4 parts are praising, asking, thanking, receiving, and back to praising again. So think of it like a circle or a clock, right? So that's why I'm doing it with this with my finger, right? So if we're going to start with praising, and then we're going to go to asking, that's the kind of the invocation portion, and then a gratitude prayer, thanking, and then receiving. That's the time that we'll go into a relaxed meditative state. And that is his, it's what they've just told me is the best way to have the best experience, is to just, when I guide you to do so, go into a relaxed meditative listening state and just let yourself fully receive whatever you want to receive. I have people telling me that they feel his presence. I have people telling me that they felt like a real strong energy coming to them. They felt the energy coming, that they felt him speak as if he was speaking directly to them about something that they really needed to know, right? But if you're too busy, like, making notes or, doing something else, which it's better than not listening at all, I guess. But the real instruction for this is to let yourself fully receive it in a relaxed meditative state. So just like when I guide you to do so, we're just going to go through these, praising, asking, thanking steps, and then I'll guide you to go into this receptive state with me. And that's when I go into the translate state and let them use my voice to speak through the vocal portion of it. So, and then we'll go back to praising again, but the praising at the beginning and the praising at the end will be slightly different. I use a longer version of a chant that they gave me, which includes divine names from Hebrew. So the divine names will be Michael, 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 which is a pronunciation of Archangel Michael's name. There's many pronunciations throughout the world. And the emphasis is on the L, Michael, Michael, Michael. In fact, the L is kind of emphasized more in this pronunciation because L is an ancient name for the divine, and Michael's name means he who is like unto God, right? So that's Michael's name, Michael or Michel in French. So the different pronunciations, and then right after that 3 times, it'll be Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu. Michael, Michael, Michael. So that's the praise chant we're going to use at the beginning. And praise is not a glorification of ego or anything like that. It's really an attempt to make a heart connection, a love-based connection with the source of all that is, with the source of all healing, the source of all angels, the source of all that is the creation of all and all in creation, right? So it's really an opportunity to use these names as a heart connection, to make a heart connection with the divine source of all. And then I'll guide us at the very end. Once it's done, he usually just stops speaking or he'll say goodbye somehow. I'll have us do the praise chant and bring it back full circle at the very end after everything. And the praise chant will be just real short at the end, and it'll be just Adonai Elohim by itself. And I'm going to guide all of this. I just wanted you to know, especially for those of you who might be new, who've never experienced it before, or you're watching on YouTube for the first time or something along that line, okay? All right, so we're going to sit back and we're going to make ourselves comfortable. I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to make sure the recordings are going. That one is going. Let me just check this one here. Always have, yep, okay. All right, so we're going to sit back and make ourselves comfortable. I'm going to close our eyes. I'm going to begin by taking some long, slow, deep breaths in order to center ourselves. Now, ladies, I'll just begin doing the praise chant, and everybody is muted. I can't see you or hear you. Nobody can, other than where you're at, right where you are. So you can do it out loud or silently with me. But again, the best experience is if you participate and go through the whole thing as a participant, not just a listener. All right, so I'll begin the praise chant, and you can follow me. Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, 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 Adonai Elohim, Adonai Eloheinu, Mikael, Mikael, Mikael. Deep inhale and exhale. We're going to move forward into the invocation, and I will guide us through asking for all the things we want to ask for. The next step in the prayer process is to call upon the presence, call in and ask for the presence of divine love and divine light to be fully present with us here today. And then let's ask to be protected and connected in a circle of love and light. A circle of love and light that's around us individually, but also that connects us, unites us, unites our light, and unites us in a circle of light. No matter where we are in time or in space, in whatever place we are in, feeling ourselves and asking for ourselves to be united in our light in a circle of love and light. A circle of protection, a circle of connection, a circle that's always open, and yet it's strong and unable to be broken. Just feel our light coming into unity. Feel our connection of hearts, kindred spirits, and a soul connection on the biggest level, and that we are all called here to be here. To be here right now, and also to be here on the planet right now. And our circle of light extends out to all in the angelic realm. And let's first and foremost invite all of our angels and guides and guardians to connect with us and unite with our light, and especially all the ones that work with us collectively, all of the archangels, all of the beings of love and beings of light and masters of love and the way of love, that they are united with us. And then let's all individually call upon Archangel Michael personally. Ask for him to come forward at this time to unite his light with ours, our light with his, coming in to make his energy even stronger, to send whatever light activation and transmission that he wants to send. That's for our highest good and for the highest good of all beings upon the earth. Ask him to send that energy transmission, and along with it, a message transmission. Ask him to hear the questions that I verbalize here today and to give us any answers or guidance about any or all of those things. And also ask him and let him know that he has our permission to speak freely to us about anything anything that he feels is for our highest good and for the highest good of all. And then we're going to move now from the asking into the thanking, into the gratitude prayer. And so we're going to first start the gratitude prayers by offering our thanks and gratitude directly to Archangel Michael for all that he does for us that's known and unknown, all that he does for the world and for us collectively that's known, and all that's unknown. Let's just give our personal thanks for all of who he is and what he does. And then our next and final prayer of gratitude will be to, in whatever way feels right to us, whether it be through prayer, whether it be through affirmations, intentions, however it feels best to you, send your direct gratitude directly to the divine, the source of all things, source of all being, for everything in your life that you're grateful for, but also for the blessing of life itself. We take these opportunities of the global transmission to also focus on the big picture, the blessing of life itself. And then we're going to deepen our breathing now. Now that we're finished with the thanking, we're going to go into the receiving. So we're going to deepen our breathing. I want you to just let yourself relax into a quiet, meditative listening state. Your meditation is just a listening meditation, just opening and being receptive and listening and allowing yourself to receive not just the vocal transmission, but any energetic transmission Archangel Michael wants to send to you. I'm going to go deeper now into my silent meditation until the next words will be the vocal part of the transmission coming through. The energies are moving at a very quickened pace on the planet right now. And as I've said in my previous transmissions, some of that is natural due to the great shift of the ages that is happening with the planet. And that I refer to as the quickening. And some of it is not coming from the highest source. And some of it is being co-created in ways that are not for the highest good of all. And also, as I have revealed, the quickening is going to continue. And so how do your nervous systems process this? And not just process it in order to survive, as I mentioned in my last message, but be able to integrate it. Run all of that energy in an integrated way through your entire energy anatomy, through your entire nervous system in a way that expands your capacity in a way that amplifies your capacity to stand in the light of truth of who you are, to stand in the light in the midst of great shadow, to stand in the light even if it is being eclipsed, to stand in the light for as long as that shadow and that eclipsing may happen, and to be the light. To be the beacon of light that you are. As your souls are more magnificent than 10,000 suns. And it's light energy. That is not all visible light. It's not all even energy on the light spectrum that your scientists currently identify as the much bigger light spectrum. Because there's so much more to it. Because the soul's light is not the light of the material world. The divine light is not the light of the material world. It's of a quality of light, a spectrum of light that casts no shadows, that knows no bounds. However, the boundaries that you do feel, the boundedness, because I am not speaking of healthy boundaries right now, I'm speaking of limitations and things that feel binding and constricting and boundedness. It's because your nervous systems aren't able yet, especially for extended long periods of time, and eventually permanently, to be able to run through the energy, through your energy anatomy and through the nervous system that is an extended part of it. Yes, with a totally different response, as I have been speaking of, a response that allows for you to thrive rather than just survive, a response that allows for you to not just thrive in a material way, but in all of the ways that that means, what that really, truly, truly means. Because thriving is not just a material thing, quite the opposite, actually. When you are all thriving in the most powerful ways, is when your soul is leading and it is being fed and it is experiencing the meaningfulness, the connectedness of everything you are and everything that you do. That is a reflection of who you are. Because what you have come here to do is a direct reflection of who you have come here to be, of who you are and who you've come here to be. So now that I've made that segue from my last message to now, I do wish to speak about some things. Some things that will help you to get there. That is necessary ultimately for not just surviving, but thriving in all that is unfolding. And there is dark shadow work ahead. There's a lot of shadow coming out. It has to come out. It cannot stay stuck in your unconscious and have you reach your soul's potential and your soul's purpose and fulfill your soul's destiny. It's coming out for each and every one of you individually. And it's coming out in a great way on the collective level. The messages that I've given on this through this channel in the past, they are extended. They are still going on. New parts, new sections, new experiences coming, but there's still more. Part of that shadow energy being aggression. And the emotions that drive aggressive responses. Part of that shadow energy being fear. And the emotions that drive those shadow responses. When you stand strong in your light, then you are not manipulated by anyone or anything to go into those shadow experiences or that shadow play. There are ways that humankind plays with the shadow. It's there for all of you. It's there in all of you. And as long as you are in the material world, it continues to be. But there is such a thing as enlightenment. It is real. Some people call it by other names and refer to it as ascension. There are definitely different understandings and concepts, which is why I am hesitant to use certain terminologies to begin with. Because my instruction to you is that it's very important to release some of those concepts and ideas that you formed around it. And to seek to just experience it, seek to just know it. Seek to just be in it. In word, in thought, in action, and in your deeds. It has to be on all levels. And everything that I teach, and that all of the spiritual traditions that are truly of love and light ultimately teach, all the spiritual cultures and teachers that are truly operating from a place of love and standing in the light of truth teach. All of it are things that can help you to get there. But what I'm going to speak about tonight, in addition to the things that I've already said that are essential for your nervous systems to enter a calmer state and be able to expand and process much more deeply, I'm going to talk about a virtue that by using this virtue, applying this virtue, it will also help your nervous systems immensely, and what you are meant to do as co-creators. Because you've all come here to be co-creators at this time on the planet. You knew many things of the soul story, and also of the unfolding vision. And that this time period would be a time period of acceleration. And it's a great time for advancement, for spiritual advancement. Before I speak about the virtue, I will remind you, especially for the sake of those who have not heard me speak on the subject, that I'm not talking about anything religious here. It is not religiosity to live and practice virtue, a virtuous life. It is not enforced morality by any means to live virtuously or to live a virtuous life. It has to be real. The virtues are real. And as I have spoke about them, what are they? They are the divine energies of creation. They are the energies of the divine everywhere in all of creation, inside you, all around you. And all you have to do is use them, tap into them, draw from them, apply them, speak from them, work with them, express them, emote them, in order to co-create with them. Create and co-create a life that you love, a community that you love, a society that you love, a culture that is a love-based culture. It has to be real, it has to be true. It cannot be false or faked in order for it to be true virtue. Somebody can use the words. What are the actions behind them? It's not enough to just speak the words. There has to be action behind them. So I'm going to speak tonight about a virtue that I have yet to speak about in its entirety. Because there's very few words in the English language to really describe it. And it is one of the reasons why I have waited until now to speak about it. It is also where things have built up to in your world where the manipulative energy, the shadow-based energy, where the aggression, where the war, where the anger, the frustration, the irritation, the fiery energy, where the judgment and the criticism and the shaming and the blaming and the hurting and the harming has built up to, and this crescendo that is happening. And yes, it has happened in humankind before. These crescendos have been reached. But where you go from here will determine whether there is much more war and these energies, or whether there is a very different direction that happens and occurs. And the virtue that there is very few words to ultimately describe. I will choose one word. It's like I have sorted through the entire English language and found one word that I feel best describes it. And it is the virtue of reconciliation. And I want to make sure that I am differentiating it right now from the virtue of forgiveness. But I also want to emphasize that they go hand in hand, that some of the divine virtues synergize together so seamlessly that one flows from the other and the other flows from that in a way that sometimes can be hard to even differentiate them. And there are some virtues that synergize so beautifully that it is natural to synergize them. Feels unnatural to not. Ultimately, reconciliation and forgiveness are intricately intertwined. But there is a virtue that is not exactly the same virtue as forgiveness, that I'm using the word reconciliation to describe. The act of reconciling. There are certain things that can be reconciled without forgiveness even happening. Reconciliation can be applied. It is used in forming things such as compromises. Not compromises that are sacrifices, but the compromises that truly are and represent what you refer to as win-win, where things are reconciled in a way that allows for good to come about and good to come through. There's different levels and degrees of it, which is why there's some level of reconciling and reconciliation that can happen without forgiveness. But the deepest practice of the virtue is to also bring in the virtue of forgiveness in order to complete it all the way through and go all the way through a reconciling process, especially when it's in regards to conflict, both inner and outer conflict. Because it's not just always outer conflict that reconciliation needs to be used for. In fact, quite the opposite, actually. If you really want things to be more harmonious, peaceful, hopeful, truthful, and all of the other virtues that I could list right now. If you really want the world and the man-made parts of it especially to not just be a better place, but to be a truly healthy, happy experience that's not temporary happiness, but that's based on a deeper, deeper source of true happiness, then inner reconciliation needs to happen. Things have to be reconciled within you. Reconciliation isn't something that just needs to happen between warring nations or culture wars or any of those things. It needs to be brought into those things, yes. But everything is energy. And the energy within you is what flows out. Your energy is not held within you, no matter how hard you try. And many of you try very hard to hold so much energy within yourselves. And it is very much to your detriment and to the detriment of everybody that you know and love, and to the detriment of the collective role that you are meant to play within the collective consciousness of the planet. No matter how much energy you exert trying to hold so much energy in, it still flows out. It cannot be held in. It's kind of like holding your breath. I will use that as an example. If you've ever held your breath for a very long time, there still will come a time where your body's nervous system will kick in and your body will breathe. So no matter how much you try to hold energy in, consciously or unconsciously, energy from the past and energy from the present and energy that makes you feel uncomfortable or emotional energy you don't feel you can express. Just your own inner unworthiness or shame or blame or guilt or whatever the emotions are. There's still the exhale. Energy has to move. It has to flow in order for life to exist. And so for conflict to be resolved externally in the collective field, it also needs to be resolved and very much needs to be focused on resolving it inwardly. But how do you get to the virtue of resolve? As I've also mentioned, that resolve is a virtue in and of itself too. How do you get to resolve? Because sometimes the virtues work together in a way that lets you to finally get to one. For example, the virtue of love. It is not always the easiest place to start. It is not always, you would think, because you are love in the very core of your soul's nature and being, that it would be the easiest. But because of the experience you're all having, it's not always the easiest. It can be, but it's not always. So sometimes compassion might need to come first, or empathy to other virtues might need to come first. two other powerful virtues that are easier to emote sometimes when love can't be felt. Same thing is true with reconciliation. It is easier to get there than it is sometimes to forgiveness, which is why I've described that forgiveness can be synergized and will ultimately be synergized with it much later in the healing process. But it is absolutely an essential virtue for moving from chaos into harmony, from conflict to peace. And so, what does it mean to reconcile within yourself? First, you cannot reconcile inner conflicts within yourself if you are doing everything you can to run and hide and avoid conflict. Because if you're doing that externally, it means you're doing that internally. You also can't get to that place of reconciling your inner conflicts, the things that are conflicting and afflicting you, if you are engaging deeply and outwardly creating more conflicts. Reconciliation means not running, not hiding, not avoiding all that needs to be reconciled, but being present to it, being aware of it. Being fully present to it, which doesn't mean just giving it time, but bringing your presence forward to see what needs to be seen. What is conflicting? And with what? And then bringing in, if it's helpful to breathing it in, using breath work, thinking of what I have just stated about the energies of the virtues being the divine energies that are all around you, just filling yourself with it. Inhaling and filling yourself with the virtue of reconciliation and what that feels like, and feel that and envision that. Calming, opening, because it does open doors. It opens doors that have been slammed shut. It opens doors that need to be open, wider, even if they're already slightly open. Reconciling. That conflict or the wound or whatever it is that is binding you, afflicting you. Reconciling it to higher wisdom, higher truth. It unites things, which is why it synergizes so well with other virtues. But ultimately, everything needs to be reconciled to love. not just the emotion of love. The virtue of love. And so it is the virtue that can help you to get there. And I have also, when I have spoken many times on the topic of love, said that love is not just an emotion, it is also not just a virtue. It is a power, a force, the greatest power, the greatest force of all known powers and forces. The power, the force of creation. The purpose, the meaning for creation. But again, that is reconciliation's greatest synergy, greatest capability as a virtue to bring you not just to even the virtue of love, but to that power. It opens doors. It opens gateways. It opens energy centers. It opens anything that's blocked, that's closed, that's hidden. That's shut down. To whatever needs to happen next. And I'm talking about the dysfunctional things. Reconciliation. Also, like all the virtues, are timeless. They can be applied to things past, present, or future. To reconcile the past with the present, so that the future can be a much brighter thing and a much better thing. In fact, if you all reconcile your pasts with your present, not only will the future be brighter, but the kingdom of heaven that is described as being within can then be created and co-created in whole new ways in your life. It doesn't require massive destruction to happen before you can shift that or change that or manifest that. It requires the virtues for sure. And when you enter into the energy of reconciliation, you embrace it. Literally, it opens things within the energy field. It opens things within your energy anatomy. It causes the energy running through the nervous system to expand in a good way. It feels natural to do so. I mentioned earlier reconciling your inner conflicts. It doesn't mean finding the perfect answer. It doesn't mean finding the perfect solution. There's still so much that I have said and that I have to say on the subject of perfectionism. as you seek to continue to bring that still into your consciousness, there is something that is a conflict in and of itself. It creates conflict because even in your fully enlightened humanness, you are still not perfect. You are here to be a part of the perfect, to serve the divine perfection that is not what being human is about, but being human is to serve that, to be an instrument for that, but not to be perfect. It's like the difference between serving the divine and seeking to try to be the divine or be God. None of you are asked to be perfect. You're asked to be who you are. And to be the children of the light, to be the children of the love that can perfect all things in a way that you do not understand, that goes so far behind and so far beyond any comprehension of perfectionism that humankind can think of. So reconciliation is not a perfect solution. If you're waiting for that, you're going to continue to wait. Even when things get resolved and it all seems to be in alignment, as all of you have known and you've experienced again and again, even the most aligned, harmonious, easily flowing, fluid things, there's still something that is there that enables you to learn from it or grow from it, or that inspires the next, or that moves you forward. There's still something always about the material energy that remains incomplete, so that you can go on to that which is next, and the next, and the next, and the next. So reconciling your inner conflicts, what is it like to do so? There is a word that is being used a lot in spiritual circles these days. That word is allowing. The first thing is to allow those 2 or 3 or 4 conflicting things, whatever those energies are, whether they are thoughts, whether they are emotions, they're still energies. What are those energies? To allow them to coexist. That's step 1. Just allow them to just be and coexist. Not fighting each other, not struggling each other, no control dramas to control one over the other. This goes on inside yourselves, and thus it goes on externally in your world in amplified ways. So bringing in reconciliation is embracing the virtue of all that it is, even if you don't understand all that it means. None of us who serve you on the highest realms expect you right now to understand this whole new way of trying to reframe it that I am trying to rise and raise forth in your consciousness. You don't have to know it all in order to invoke it and evoke it from within and just allow it to be. Choose reconciliation of your inner conflicts and just allow it to be, and allow yourself to just be with those things without resisting them, without fighting, without aggression or any of those things apply. Just allow them to be. Honoring the uniqueness of each of those different things. And that they're all there for a reason. Most of the things that you're conflicted about in your thoughts and in your emotions, those thoughts, those feelings, they're there for a reason. There's something that has brought them there, that makes them be there. And reconnect them. Reconnect them. Reconcile. The true virtue of it, the true action of it, brings reconnection. Allow them to just be aware of what they are, why they are. Honor, respect their purpose for being, their reason for existing, the differences for what they are and why they are. And seek to reconnect them. Again, not perfectly. Or seek what can connect them. This is something that you oftentimes refer to as compromise. Where is the thing that can connect them? What is the thing that can connect them? If this is applied in a relationship, for example, it could potentially bring a relationship back together again. It also could be the very thing that leads to the relationship going through separation and completing and going through the process of separation. Because when things are reconnected, it doesn't mean that the reunion happens and takes place. Union and unity is a whole other virtue in and of itself, and sometimes the most loving place to come to and finding where they can connect or where they can reconnect in order to move forward. Sometimes it very much means saying no to a reunion or a union, especially when it comes to relationships of different types and natures. But this place of reconciliation and finding this place of connection has to happen first. And perhaps it's finding what can it connect around, especially on the inner self. And it's best to do this not in a way that's just strictly analytical either, because your left brain aspect of your mind will need to be involved, and then it will have a role to play in this inner reconciliation process, but it is only a fraction of what your mind is capable of. And even the right brain that most of you have access to is still only a fraction of what your mind is capable of. Allow some of it to come forward, not from the mind and the mind alone. The best place of reconciliation is when the heart and the mind are reconciled. When they are reconciled, and they are part of that inner reconciliation. In fact, a great deal of what needs to be reconciled inside yourselves comes from that. Comes from the inner conflict between your heart and your minds. And just like your mind has all these different parts, so does the heart, different aspects of the heart. And letting the soul lead. Because the soul is where they all connect. It's where it all connects. Your mind and all of its different aspects and all of its different functions and capabilities is an energetic expansion of your soul's energy, your spirit's energy. So is your emotional self. I've referred to even as its own body, or emotional fields. So rich and diverse. And the physical and material energy fields. And it is always best to approach this work using the soul self, using the higher self, as some people call it, to be the one using the virtue, to be the one who is the reconciler. Because it puts you back in the driver's seat. You are the soul. You're not a mind seeking to have spiritual experiences. You're not an ego seeking to have spiritual experiences. You're not your emotions, no matter how strong and powerful they are. You're not your traumas. You're not your karma. But find the connection point. And reconciliation can happen. And it can occur. And here's the other beauty about the virtues, is they are the divine energies. You need to tap into them, use them, draw them, evoke them, invoke them. Create and co-create with them, but you don't have to do it all on your own. You're not the source of them. And grace and mercy kicks in, comes in, moves and flows. And you don't have to do it. You're not the ones doing it ultimately. You're the ones seeking it. You're the ones choosing it. You're the ones engaging and relating ultimately to the source of it. I mentioned the word compromise. It is something that is a very good thing ultimately if it's done properly, if it's done in the spirit of reconciliation, if it's done as a practice of reconciliation. If it's done in an abusive way, if it's done in a forced way, if it's done as a form or type of forcing sacrifice or a pain, then it's not true compromise. It cannot be an instrument in that way for reconciliation. But while compromise has been done in this shadow way, it doesn't mean that it's real compromise, and that compromise should never be seen True compromise should never be seen as a bad thing. It's not making a deal, even. Can compromises start that way? Perhaps, especially on the big picture, on the larger scale of the collective level of things. But again, it depends on that, how that is done, and then how that is followed up on. And while you are not in control of reconciling everything on the collective level, none of you are. No one is. You can still invoke the virtues, invoke reconciliation, and ask for it. Ask for it to move and flow in a situation. So that things can be reconciled eventually to the point of peace, which is not just the absence of conflict. I have given many messages on that topic through this channel and through many others. Sometimes when energies have reached a certain point, it can feel like peace is not possible, but it is possible. But it is not the thing that can occur first with the way that the energies are right now. Inside yourselves and in your cultures and your nations and the planet itself. There is great resilience. There is always hope. Never for a moment does it not exist. Because the virtues exist. But sometimes it's knowing which one you need to turn to. Knowing which one you need to use in order to co-create with. And right now, inside yourselves, inside your relationships, inside your communities, is reconciliation. Again, which also doesn't mean accepting a bad outcome. That's not what reconciliation is. It doesn't mean accepting a bad choice. That's not reconciliation either. Keep going deeper. Keep connecting and reconnecting until the choice is clear or made clear in other ways. Because again, it may not be something that you figure out with your mind, but that reveals itself in other ways. Ultimately, the divine reconciler. The divine reconciles all opposites. No matter how extremely opposite they are, no matter how extremely polarized those opposites may be, there still is the divine power to reconcile. all opposites exist as one reconciled whole anyway, unseparated, one and yet different. Just because something is opposite does not mean that it cannot be reconciled. That's the whole point of it to begin with. Why the virtue of reconciliation even exists to begin with. So that that sacred uniqueness and individuality and independence that is there, that creates all of your differences, cannot just coexist, but be in dynamic union with the oneness of the whole of all that you are, and the oneness and the whole that all of you are a part of, and the oneness and the whole of all that is. There are certain people who have certain soul gifts to help others. People who have soul gifts of the archetype of the mediator. Those who truly have the soul gifts of the archetype of the diplomat. These are not just jobs, they are archetypes. Others who are visionaries, who can also play a role in helping reach reconciliation. Certain healers that understand the wholeness and the individuality. You also do not have to reach all of the places of reconciliation and come to all of where it can bring you. Alone, sometimes working with the virtue and invoking the virtue means receiving the help of others who can also help you. Certain types of counselors, certain types of therapists, sometimes as well. There are people with gifts who can help with reconciliation on the inner level, on the relationship level, on the outer level. Sometimes choosing to work with that virtue will also lead you to working with some of those people. You are a part of one whole. You are an individual, but you are not alone. You are not alone. You have never been alone, and you will never be alone. And it's okay to ask for help, because sometimes that's another gift of using the virtue. Is that reconciliation leads you to a place where you realize help would be helpful, help would be needed or welcomed. So welcome it. And don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's a very humbling thing, yes, but humility is another wonderful virtue that you all need. That the egos always need. Coming full circle now to what I was saying about the nervous system and why I began speaking about the virtue of reconciliation. When inner conflicts come to a place of reconciliation and eventually through a reconciliation process come to resolve, the nervous system clears, especially when it comes to resolve. Whatever that resolve looks like, however it manifests as. And it can manifest in so many myriad ways. That resolve can look like many, many things. But truly, things that have been impacting your nervous system can clear. Sometimes completely, depending upon what it is. Completely transmute. You've all experienced some of what I'm saying ultimately, some way, on some level, with something. I am reframing it. There's no doubt about it. It's time for things to be reframed so that you can approach it in new ways. Take all of the things that I've just said here and given from my heart and receive it into yours as I speak it and offer it from my heart to yours, with my prayer that it serve you and all humankind and all of earthkind. For your highest good to be done. And for the highest will to be done. That's the end of the message. I'll just take a moment to say a silent prayer of thankfulness and appreciation for the message and for the Archangel Michael. And then I'm just going to finish bringing it back to the praise, and we'll do the Adonai Elohim by itself just a couple of times, just to bring it back full circle through the end, completing the process. Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim. Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim. And then we slowly bring ourselves up out of the meditation, coming fully back into opening our eyes. I'm going to keep my eyes closed for a moment to, I cannot describe some of the visuals that I was seeing. Some of it was just, I would call it geometries. Um, all kinds of geometries of how all the virtues connect and intersect and intertwine. And there's definitely an elaborate geometry and moving, shifting geometries I was seeing about how certain ones can synergize together, and then a new geometry would appear. So there was a lot of those kind of visuals. What stood out other than that, on the feeling level, I could feel him as if he was like almost like searching through the files of my mind looking for the right word. And reconnection is one of the words that I thought was going to be said, but reconciliation he felt was the better word of it. But obviously he's talking about reconnection within it. I've been I, I've just been feeling a lot of times when they talk about these things, I get blessed with this opportunity to feel what they're talking about. Like again, have an experience of what Archangel Michael is talking about, and I'm always in awe of that and benefited by it greatly. And I feel like there's going to be more on this topic, especially on the connection between how the virtue of forgiveness and reconciliation kind of brings us to that place of that virtue of resolve, like brings us to resolve. I felt like he wanted to go more into that, but for the sake of time and maybe for the sake of not putting too much and not confusing us too much, trying to keep it as simple as he could, choosing to not go beyond other than the mentions that he gave of it. But I'm really looking forward to hearing that message whenever that message comes through on how reconciliation and forgiveness and resolve um, all come together, right? How they all work together, come together. And I was very happy personally to hear him speak about a new virtue. I've been wondering, I don't even know how many years it's been now, for a few years, been channeling from Archangel Michael messages about the virtues. He says there's 44. He's identified 38, 39. This might be the 39th of the 44. And there for a while, he was identifying them quite regularly and speaking about them quite regularly. And then he hasn't. He hasn't for a while. And I've just kind of, there must be a timing. There must be a reason for these ones that he hasn't spoken about yet. And it's almost like we need to like hear them at the time that we really need them or something. And obviously this is the time that we really need to be working with this one. And I loved his explanation about the influence on the nervous system and how it would help the nervous system to work with the virtues in general, but also this particular inner conflicts, like anything that's conflicting us, even if it's an inner conflict with perfectionism, right? Like whatever those inner conflicts are, anything we're fighting inside of ourselves or resisting inside of ourselves or holding back inside of ourselves, there's going to be some level of conflict there, even if it's not a big obvious one, right? So reconciling those, yeah, very very intriguing topic. Hopefully there'll be more on these topics, right? So, and I will at some point, there's usually a period where, like oftentimes during the winter months, where Archangel Michael doesn't do the global transmissions unless he decides to keep going, right? So I don't know. But if there is, when there's going to be a time where I know there's going to be a period of time where there's not going to be new transmissions, I will do some studies, if not of all of these messages, but of at least some of them. But they're all pretty important. So I may do a study group of all these messages where we kind of dig deeper into them, read the transcripts of them. You receive the transcripts of them when I do the study groups, etc. So I'll let you all know if and when that time comes. So now I'm going to go to the chat, but before I do, I'm going to turn off the recordings so that they don't get too long. So, yep, they get long. All right.